Good evening and welcome to Who's That Type 1? It is truly wonderful to see all of you here tonight. And as the president of Stanford Club of Greece, it gives me great pleasure to open an event like this that speaks to the core of our mission. Not only to connect our alumni community, but to actively participate in public dialogue and contribute to positive impact in society. At Stanford, there is a motto, Die Luft der Freiheit weht, the wind of freedom blows. It reflects a commitment to openness, understanding, and human progress. And tonight, in our own way, we honor that spirit. This evening centers around type 1 diabetes, but its purpose extends far beyond a medical condition. We are here tonight to explore themes that shape every healthy society, these of understanding, empathy, inclusion, and community. Last Friday, on November 14th, marked World Diabetes Day. This is a reminder that some conditions, despite affecting millions globally, remain largely invisible in everyday life. And invisibility, as we will hear today, can be at times the toughest burden for someone to carry. This event was envisioned by Myrto Stergiou, whose determination to raise awareness and inspire her community is truly remarkable. But this evening is not about a single individual. Rather, it is about the courage of one person to spark a broader conversation that belongs to all of us. When Myrto first shared her desire to speak openly about her journey, the Stanford Club immediately embraced the idea. I have to admit, though, that at the moment, I said yes easily, maybe too easily. Not because we didn't want to do that, but because I didn't understand what it truly means to live with type 1 diabetes, what it means for the person living with it, what it means for the parents having to navigate all the complexity of the condition and the unpredictability of every single moment, what it means for the school environment that needs to adapt, and the broader systems that need to respond with awareness and support. So I did my homework, and the more I learned, the more I realized how essential tonight's conversation is. Because understanding is not automatic, empathy comes with effort. And events like this help us build that muscle to start viewing the world from someone else's perspective. Our hope is that tonight brings each one of us one step closer to recognizing what so many experience quietly. The complexities of an invisible condition, the resilience in demands, and the simple but profound power of curiosity, dialogue, and human connection. This is why I'm so deeply moved with the turnout of this event and with all of you being here tonight. Your presence is proof that when the community comes together around a cause, meaningful change becomes possible. Before we begin, I would like to extend some important acknowledgements. Aegean Airlines and Pharmaserve-Lilly, thank you for your generous sponsorship. Without your support, an event of this scale and this importance could not have been possible. Protagon, our media sponsor, thank you for amplifying this initiative. Thank you for helping us extend the message to a wider audience. St. Catherine's, thank you for hosting us and for embracing this initiative with such openness and enthusiasm. Your support reflects how schools can and must be, what role they can have in shaping more inclusive environments. And of course, thank you to all our distinguished participants who dedicated their time to this cause. Now, this evening will unfold in several parts. Voices from education, science, and public policy will be represented through a keynote speech, a fireside chat, and a panel discussion. After the completion of the formal program, I invite you all to stay at the reception that will take place afterwards and continue the conversation in a less formal way. Once again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for choosing to listen, to understand, and to engage. Let's make this event one that leaves a lasting mark. Now, to begin this evening formally, it is with great pleasure to invite to this stage two individuals whose leadership and support made tonight possible. Mr. John Perriss, Principal of St. Catherine's Brady School, and Mr. Spyros Filiotis, Vice President and General Manager of Pharmaserve-Lilly. John, and then Spyros, the floor is yours.
Panos, thank you very much indeed. A very, very warm welcome to St. Catherine's British School, to our many friends and families, as well as staff and student supporters. And to coin a cliche, that a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet, a very warm welcome to those for whom it is your first time here. Founded in the grounds of the British Embassy in 1956, we're a vibrant, ambitious, caring community. We are a not-for-profit charitable school, proud of our British heritage, proud of our international outlook, and proud of our Greek home. All three symbiotic elements energize each other, as does an insatiable desire to learn, reflect, and evolve with purpose and passion. The world is an ever-changing maelstrom, and it is our job as educators and parents to guide our young people calmly, safely, and lovingly, giving them confidence so they can adapt and thrive in whatever environment they are going into. Much of this confidence comes from the provision of opportunity in all its guises, and tonight is a good example of this. I am hugely grateful to Myrto's dad, Christos, for the energy he has devoted, taking her idea to raise awareness of type 1 diabetes and being determined to ensure that theory becomes practice. To the Stanford Club of Greece, the sponsors, and my fellow participants, thank you for being here and showing your support of such an important initiative. I'm also thankful that the event is linguistically inclusive. I'm pleased with my progress with ordering food, coffee, and a range of greetings that cater to different times of the day and year. However, I fear my Greek vocabulary would be insufficient for such an occasion. This inclusivity is warmly appreciated. We are all aware that not every condition is visible, and it is really important that we understand the impact that type 1 has on those for whom it is a constant presence. 5.8 million people in the UK are living with diabetes. 400,000 of those have type 1. There are well-known people across the globe who have type 1 and fly the flag in terms of awareness, support, research, and understanding. Halle Berry, the Oscar-winning American actress, and Sir Steve Redgrave, the 5-times Olympic gold medal rower from the UK, to name but two high-profile type 1 names. Tonight is a real step forward in type 1 awareness. As an educator, it is a proud moment as Myrto has transferred the courage that she shows every day to display a public courage, to stand up in front of you all and tell her story. She did this last week in front of all her peers, maybe even a tougher proposition. And as with any movement, it is done one step at a time. Rosa sat so Martin could walk, so Barak could fly. Progression is rarely seismic, but more often incremental. Type 1 awareness and understanding is growing, and we are all important in spreading the message. I hope that this evening will be enlightening and thought-provoking, empowering you with knowledge and maybe even a missionary zeal to be both an advocate and friend for those in our community who are living, not just with type 1, but also with any condition. My thanks for your support, and let this be the start of the conversation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, maybe. As well as what it says on the screen behind me, I'm also a father of 3 daughters at the school in years 11, 8, and 5. Now, it is truly a great privilege for Pharmaserve-Lilly to be supporting this beautiful event. Who's that type 1? Lilly is the pharmaceutical company that first produced insulin at scale, a breakthrough that, as you know, changed the lives of people with type 1 diabetes around the world. Today, more than 100 years later, after many iterations of incremental benefit, because like you said, none of these were seismic changes, thanks to the advances in insulin and device technology, the approximately 10 million people around the world living with type 1 diabetes can look forward to longer, fuller, and better lives. And rest assured that Lilly and all the other major pharmaceutical companies continue to invest and innovate and try to discover newer, better insulins and other therapies for type 1 diabetes. Tonight, however, it is my great honor to introduce a Year 9 student at St. Catherine's who, as you know, imagined and created this event, Ms. Myrto Stergiou. Myrto will share her own journey as a person living with type 1 diabetes. Her strength, maturity, and courage are inspiring to me personally, to our community, and to all of us who work in supporting people with type 1 diabetes. This event, though, is also a call to action, a call to listen and learn, to choose empathy and inclusion, and to stand together as a community behind Myrto's cause. The challenge, I think, to all of us is simple yet profound. Every person living with type 1 diabetes, every diabetes warrior, needs to feel that they have one more ally, each of us, in their journey through their type 1 life. Dear Myrto, please come up. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Who's That Type 1. I'm deeply grateful to see you all here today. Truly, thank you for wanting to learn, to listen, and to stand by the type 1 diabetes community. My story began on a quiet October evening. I remember showing my family my Halloween costume, full of excitement, when my dad stepped out onto the balcony and frantically started making phone calls. Naturally, I went and asked him what was wrong. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm going to find a way for you to feel okay." Before I could even understand what that meant, we were driving to the hospital. After that, it's all scattered fragments, harsh lights, sterile white walls, the kind of haze that makes it hard to discern dream from reality. That whole day was a bit of a blackout, you know, not exactly the highlight of my childhood. The only thing I can really remember is the confusion and fear, the kind that no 7-year-old should ever have to face. I didn't know it yet, but that day would change my life forever. It was the day I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. When people hear the word diabetes, they often imagine sugar, or lack of it, diets, and someone checking a glucose monitor. But type 1 diabetes is many things: complex, unpredictable, and anything but simple. Type 1 diabetes isn't caused by eating too much sugar, and I can't be healthy for the rest of my life just because I exercise twice a week. It's an autoimmune disease caused by my immune system destroying the insulin-producing cells in my pancreas. Without insulin, my body can't process glucose, the fuel every cell needs to function. It's an incurable condition I'll have for the rest of my life. I also wanted to clarify that type 1 and type 2 diabetes are incredibly different conditions. Diabetes has left me to do what my body couldn't. Every day consists of countless decisions: counting carbs, monitoring my blood sugar levels, and calculating the amount and timing of the insulin I have to take. My blood sugar levels are never stable. I have to be incredibly careful of the highs and lows, which can lead to serious consequences for my health. But type 1 diabetes isn't just some numbers on a screen. Living with it means struggling to focus in class because my blood sugar is low. It's carrying a bottle of juice everywhere, just in case I need it. It's learning that every bite, every step, every minute can change a reading on a screen out of my control. And that every decision I make in that moment is a difference between life and death. Diabetes is often regarded as an invisible condition. I believe that only people who live with it truly understand what that means. I faced numerous challenges in my daily life, many of which are critical for my short-term, and even more so long-term, health. There's so few people I can truly lean on. People who understand those struggles instead of trying to convince me that I'm doing something wrong. One of the things I value most in my life is people's willingness to learn. Many ask me about diabetes, sometimes out of curiosity, sometimes out of genuine care. That open display of empathy is something I have rarely encountered, and that's exactly what I want to change. I want every person with type 1 diabetes to feel seen, understood, and never alone. Through my journey with diabetes, I've come to understand the phrase, "Every cloud has a silver lining." Diabetes might be a constant challenge, but it's also a part of who I am. It has shaped so many aspects of my personality, shown me empathy, patience, and resilience. Today, I can't remember what it's like to eat without counting carbs or run without a bottle of juice close by. I don't know how to act on impulse, to do something just because I feel like it. At just 7 years old, I lost the spontaneity of being a child. But I gained something else, the understanding that even when your life changes forever, you can still create something meaningful from it. My childhood with diabetes was one of the hardest chapters of my life. between learning to manage a lifelong condition and the loneliness that came with it, I often felt invisible. I didn't have anyone who truly understood what I was going through. I remember feeling ignored, misunderstood, and confused about how this new condition would change my world. As I grew older, I realized the hardest part wasn't managing the condition itself, despite the extreme difficulty involved. It was making others understand it. For as long as I can remember, people have had their own misconceptions about what it means to live with type 1. They often think I can't eat sugar, that I can't play sports, that I can't be normal. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Diabetes doesn't limit me, it strengthens me. This experience has made me more determined, more patient, more understanding. It's taught me resilience in the face of invisible struggles. I may face more challenges than others, but I can still achieve anything I set my mind to. Diabetes has become one of my greatest sources of inspiration. It's shown me just how much is possible, even in the face of difficulty. People with type 1 diabetes, like Nick Jonas, Olympic snowboarder Shane Busby, tennis player Alexander Zverev, and marathon runner Missy Foy, are proof that type 1 diabetes isn't a barrier, it's a drive. They've shattered boundaries and expectations, and most of all, proved that we are so much more than our condition. In many ways, diabetes became the reason I found my motivation. It pushed me to help others, to advocate for awareness, and to see strength from a perspective I couldn't have gained otherwise. Not the absence of struggle, but the courage to continue. Strength doesn't mean much if it stays silent. Awareness is how we turn our experiences into something meaningful. Awareness of type 1 diabetes matters deeply to me. It ensures people can see the person behind the diagnosis. True understanding begins with curiosity, asking instead of assuming, understanding instead of pitying. Every act, every word, every moment builds it. Awareness doesn't begin with something revolutionary. It begins with small human moments, a simple conversation, a genuine question, offering support to someone who needs it. These moments build empathy, and empathy builds change. The truth is, ignorance can be just as isolating as the condition itself. I often think of ignorance not as a lack of understanding, but the absence of willingness to understand. That understanding is all I'm asking you to offer. That is the bridge we all need. Ignorance isolates, but empathy connects. World Diabetes Day exists exactly for that reason, to ensure diabetes is no longer invisible, to unite everyone around empathy and change. But one day of awareness doesn't speak to the millions of people around the world living with type 1, with more than 20,000 in Greece. I wanted to create something lasting, something capable of real impact. That's why I created Who's That Type 1, with the vision that no one with type 1 diabetes should ever feel invisible, discriminated against, or misunderstood. My goal is to create a community that feels united, where no one has to face diabetes alone. Because at the end of the day, true awareness goes beyond knowing what type 1 is. It's about knowing who we are. The belief that empathy can completely transform someone's life is what tonight is about. Not just awareness, but connection. Living with type 1 diabetes has taught me that strength isn't merely about being strong. It's about embracing vulnerability too. Strength is waking up every day and choosing to keep going, to realize that diabetes doesn't define us. We define it. We endure it. We overcome it. We redefine its struggles, its challenges, and every single part of it. But most importantly, diabetes has taught me about the power of kindness. That when people come together to support one another, no one ever has to feel alone. I hope tonight shows that awareness is hollow without action behind it. That's something we can all build together, step by step, moment by moment, word by word, because every one of us has the power to do it. Together, we can rewrite the story of what it means to live with type 1 diabetes, because ultimately, we're not defined by numbers or by our challenges. We are defined by how we stand up for each other. And that is the most important thing of all. Thank you. Thank you.
Myrto, thank you. You set a great example for all of us, for your brother, obviously. This is great. So, your honesty and your courage sets the tone for the rest of the evening. And thank you for trusting all of us with your story. Okay? Now, before we continue to the rest of the event, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping and mention a few of the logistics. We will be collecting questions that we can use later in a Q&A session through Mentimeter. There are two different ways to access that, either by scanning the QR code directly or going to menti.com and using the code shown on the screen, right? One of the two networks, I mean, if your mobile is not working, one of the two networks should work fine. Please try both. If you are challenged still, please remember that at the reception we will stay around and you can bring up your questions. Okay, now let us take a deeper dive into what it means living with type 1 diabetes. And please join me at welcoming to the stage Dr. Ploutarchos Tzoulis, Honorary Associate Professor in Endocrinology at University College London, and Myrto Stergiou.
Good evening to all of you. I hope you can hear me well. The microphone works well. We have a second one. So, for the next 30 or 40 minutes, we have what we call a fireside with Myrto. First of all, I have to admit something. I have been thinking about it the last 10 minutes. I have given tens, probably hundreds of talks it has been one of the occasions I find very difficult to follow the previous speaker. And a lot of the previous speakers were very eminent professors, but I think what you can hear from like a year 9 student like Myrto sharing essentially her passion, her vision, and the day-to-day challenges, it can be very difficult to follow. So let me start with a very brief overview, because obviously this is not a medical lesson and you're not medical students. So diabetes, we all know a lot of people who have diabetes. Diabetes essentially means having higher levels of glucose, of sugar in the bloodstream than our body is designed to have. When the levels are higher, the impact can be very detrimental on a lot of our organs, starting from the heart, the vessels, the kidneys, the eyes. Most people with diabetes have type 2 diabetes. And this is something, one of the take-home messages. Around only 1 in 10 has type 1 diabetes, which is very different from type 2. It can be, and it is much more difficult to treat and control. Type 1 is an autoimmune condition. Very often it starts at a very early age, around the age of 5 years old or 10 to 12 years old, but it can happen at any age. Anyone can get it. And this is another message. Type 1 diabetes is not a choice, it's not a lifestyle decision. Essentially, it just happens like a lot of other chronic medical conditions because of this is an autoimmune process. So moving to the type 1 diabetes, there is a lack of insulin, and insulin is absolutely essential and necessary in order to control the levels of glucose in our bloodstream. When the beta cells in the pancreas essentially are to a very large extent destroyed, there is lack of insulin. So that means that lifelong, if you have type 1 diabetes, you need insulin. There is a more, I would say, traditional regimen with 3, 4, 5 injections a day and pricking your fingers a lot of times. Or now, with advanced technology, you can have a sensor which all the time continuously is monitoring your blood glucose levels, but also a pump which essentially is attached to your body that is providing insulin. Then, with regards to the impact on the health, I would say there are 2 sides on this coin. It very much depends on the control of blood glucose. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of support. We know that nowadays people living with type 1 diabetes can live a long and healthy and full life without essentially being excluded from any type of activities. But if the control is not as good as it should be, then we also know that unfortunately diabetes is one of the leading causes of kidney problems, of blindness, of amputations, of heart disease, of a lot of other problems. So you can see the 2 sides of this coin. So this is a very brief overview, and I hope that you have a better idea than you had before. And then I think, Myrto, I would like to share with us some of the challenges. What we used to say, especially when we firstly meet someone with a new diagnosis of diabetes, and I would say this consultation takes a very long time. It is estimated that 150 to 300 decisions per day has to be taken by a person with type 1 diabetes day in, day out for the rest of their lives. So what do you think about this number, Myrto?
Yes, I think that people with diabetes have to take a lot of external factors into account that someone who doesn't have diabetes wouldn't even think about doing, like running or eating a meal or something like that. For example, whenever I have to eat something, for example, my lunch, I have to calculate the amount and the timing of the insulin I have to take. So it's something that makes daily life a lot more complex, and it also contains many difficulties and many decisions that you have to take every single day.
Okay, and I appreciate all this, but also a lot of people with diabetes, as we say, we know that there are good days and bad days. And I can tell you from experience as a physician looking after people with diabetes for almost 20 years, and there have been tens of thousands of people, there is a great sense of unpredictability. So there have been studies, and we know that essentially there are tens of factors. So could you give us an example, Myrto? And I think there are also some essentially interactions with your family about taking the decision. We could see in the screen probably, let's say in the middle of a test, like on an exam.
Yes. So, as I mentioned before, the complexity of diabetes means that you have to take urgent decisions that really can't wait a lot of the time. So I could be in school in the middle of the test and have to check my phone to see if I need to eat something, if I need to drink some juice. And I have my parents who support me and who I can communicate with in school as well to see what I can do. But yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of things that I have to take into account in my daily school life.
Okay, and I think it would be insightful for all of us to think about, let's say, a classic example of an urgent situation. Let's say what most people, I think, have heard about what a hypo is, essentially this hypoglycemia, so levels of blood glucose below the normal one. And we know that people feel quite unwell, they can feel shaky, sweaty, the body is under a lot of strain, and you can even lose your consciousness, collapse, and end up in the hospital. So how much of a problem can it be in your daily life or even in the school life?
So it is a very big problem. When my blood sugar is low, I often feel dizzy, that sort of sense of lightheadedness, maybe something that you would feel before you faint. When my blood sugar is high, I often feel tired or thirsty or something like that. But this can vary from person to person, and everyone has different things that they deal with.
Okay. And I think as you can see at the back of the screen, the next time, let's say, you take a decision or spontaneously you eat like a biscuit or you drink your favorite morning cappuccino, most of us, they don't have to take into account 42 different variables to take a decision about what they are going to do. So this, I think, shows to very, very small extent the complexity. And even taking into account all this, even the best algorithms in the world, I can tell you very often, almost in every consultation, finally we say that even if you are very experienced, even if you know everything inside out, there are factors which you cannot take into account. But let's going back to low or high blood sugars. Have there been occasions, let's say, in your school life or outside the school life when someone didn't appreciate how urgent it was for you to do something or didn't realize the importance or thought you were exaggerating?
Yes, so a lot of people don't understand how complex diabetes is, and many of the time the urgency of the decisions that need to be taken. And so I've faced a lot of this in my daily life and in my school life as well. But as I hope what tonight will show you is that everyone with type 1 diabetes is very grateful for all the support shown by their friends, their family, their teachers, everyone who can find the strength to kind of give that awareness and that support to people. But yeah.
Okay. And again, at the back of the screen, you can see the ups and downs. And actually, and I have to admit that this is a good scenario. So this is when you have relatively good control. A lot of people can, within very few minutes, go from very high levels to very low levels, which can impact them a lot. But I think extending on this, my experience as a physician is that a lot of people have conversations with friends or relatives, and a lot of close to them, they don't appreciate the difficulty because, for example, they say, I have type 2, I'm very well controlled, probably you make a mistake, probably you don't have all the right information and you don't have the right doctor. Would you like to make a comment on this about the type 2 and the type 1 and how often people essentially confuse type 1 with type 2?
Yeah, so it's a very common misconception between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So I have type 1, and basically what that means is that my pancreas is not functioning at all. However, a type 2 may have some insulin in their pancreas. So what that means is that my blood sugar levels fluctuate a lot, and I have to take extra precautions and extra actions to make sure they're kept stable. And so that's definitely something that is really common for people to think and to assume. So I just wanted to clarify that there is a difference between the two.
Okay. I think also that it is a great opportunity to debunk some of the myths and the misconceptions. Another one, which also this has been shown in a lot of studies and surveys of people living with type 1 diabetes, is, and there was a recent survey actually in Australia and in Canada, more than 90% of people with type 1, very often they essentially feel that they are judged because they would like to have a sweet or a dessert. What would you like to say about this? Has it ever happened to you?
Yes, it has happened to me many times. There have been many comments of people saying, oh, maybe you shouldn't run, maybe you shouldn't do this, maybe you shouldn't eat that. And while I appreciate their concern for my safety, I think it's important to know that a lot of people can underestimate what diabetes is. And oftentimes, it isn't simple at all to take all these decisions, and there are a lot of factors you have to take into account, and there are a lot of different things you have to consider. So I have faced these comments a lot in my daily life in the past, but I think it's important to clarify that type 1 diabetics can do anything and everything.
Okay, I couldn't agree more. And also, I think this is another message that this is what happens when there is so much information as it happens nowadays. So we know, and this is the scientific consensus, that people living with type 1 diabetes, they can essentially eat whatever they like. Obviously, they should have it in moderation, but this applies to all of us. So in any way, they should not be restricted from specific activities or from not eating something. The other comment I would like to make is that in the past, and we're making great efforts as a community of healthcare professionals, people used to be called essentially diabetics in the same way that people were asthmatics or dyslexics. Do you feel as a diabetic person? You understand what you mean? In the way, essentially, that this implies a bias and a stigma of other people, that you are defined because of having type 1 diabetes.
No, I don't feel that diabetes defines me. I think it's definitely a part of who I am, and it has shaped so many aspects of my personality and who I am as a person. But I don't feel that it limits me in any way. On the contrary, I think that it strengthens me. And I think it's very important for all the people with type 1 diabetes out there to know that a condition doesn't define you, and that you can do anything that you set your mind to.
Okay, and I think one other aspect, which again has been studied in quite detail, is that very often people with type 1 diabetes, but even more teenagers and children, they're excluded from sports activities or from school activities, essentially in order to be protected, because there is a misconception that they're sick or they are ill, so they should not take part. Has it happened to you, or what would you like to happen in order to make sure essentially this doesn't happen to your peers or other students?
It hasn't happened to me personally, but I've heard of a lot of different examples where people with type 1 diabetes have faced these kind of experiences, and it's a big part of it is the ignorance that they also face in their daily life, because not many people know what type 1 diabetes is. And so they often assume things that aren't true. And type 1 diabetics may be limited, and other people may tell them, oh, maybe you shouldn't do this, and may be excluded from things. And that can definitely hurt a person's pride, and I think it's something that no child should ever have to face.
And actually, I'm very glad that it has not happened to you. And I'm very glad that essentially we're at St. Catherine's, which has put all the measures in place. So this, essentially, you are included in all these activities. But I have to admit that there have been campaigns worldwide, because still, I would say, in a large proportion of schools worldwide, there are a lot of incidents in order, essentially, for teachers in gymnastics to feel safe, or for other things, for children not to be included. Another thing I would like also, do you have any experience to share with us with regards to feeling like stigmatized, or feeling like that you were not included, not only in school life, but in general because of type 1?
There's a lot of stigma around type 1 diabetes because, again, as I said before, a lot of people don't understand what it means. I have faced in the past, especially when I was diagnosed, because I was only 7 years old, and as one can imagine, you can't ask a 7-year-old to provide that support, be it your friend or anyone else in your class or in your year. So there were times that I felt very alone, that I felt invisible, and like no one could really understand what I was going through. But I don't feel that anymore, thankfully, because as I grow older, I'm trying to raise awareness as well through tonight's event. And I hope that more and more of you will understand what type 1 diabetes truly means.
Okay, great. And I think also what I would like to share with all of you and with you, Myrto, as we have discussed beforehand, is that if you go back 20 or 30 years ago, I can tell you that it's only a small minority of people with type 1 who are open about their conditions and the challenges they face. So I have to share with you that most people you meet in the clinic, actually, they share with you the experience that there are only 2 or 3 relatives or close friends who know about their conditions. And actually, this very often can be very, very dangerous. So there are people essentially who don't even have a single person in the work environment they have ever shared this information, because they're worried that they will be judged, they will be isolated, or they will be discriminated. Moving back to one point about diagnosis, do you feel, do you remember, I know you were 7 years old, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember what kind of symptoms would you like to share with us, how you were feeling at that stage? You felt unwell?
Mm-hmm. So I was very tired all the time. I was very thirsty, so I would drink a lot of water. I would go to the bathroom quite a lot. I was losing a lot of weight, and I couldn't figure out why. So these were all things that really impacted my health and my daily life, and there were things that I didn't understand. I didn't understand what was happening to me. So yeah, I think it definitely.
Okay. And this also, I think, it's a very good opportunity. There has been a campaign in the UK during the last few years, in a lot of other countries, about the 4 T's. Essentially, this is toilet, so you need to go to the toilet to urinate very often. Thirsty, so you drink a lot of fluids and water. Thin, you lose rapidly weight. And tired, because these are the 4 classic symptoms, and still nowadays, 3 out of 4 people who are diagnosed, they recognize the symptoms, they, on their own and their families, very late. And this has as a result to be hospitalized, to be actually in a very serious condition, even in a life-threatening condition. So this is another message that essentially having any of these four T's, any of these symptoms, someone needs to consult a healthcare professional and check the blood sugar. This is a very simple test. So moving towards the end of this chat, so let's say in an ideal world, what do you expect from your classmates, from your teachers?
In an ideal world, I would like to have just that understanding of what type 1 diabetes is. You don't have to fully comprehend everything about it, but one thing that I would like is the support and the care and the understanding of all of you, because that truly means so much to me.
Okay, okay. And I hope that today's event will contribute towards this direction. And also I would like to add that the first, I would say, huge step is to be open, like we all are today, being open about type 1, being open about any essentially medical conditions we have and we all may face, or any other struggles, to build the resilience, to share our experience, and also, I think, beyond the type 1 and raise awareness. We're all here today to contribute towards a school community, but also a society of showing understanding and empathy, avoiding having stigma, so people are not defined by the struggles or by the medical conditions they have, and hopefully things will get better and better. And I think this is a great moment to see essentially how the school community, St. Catherine's, but also how, in general, the system can help with regards to school nurses, with regards to health literacy, with regards to a lot of initiatives about creating this environment and this culture. So this was the end of the fireside chat. Anything you would like to add, Myrto? Feel free to add anything.
I don't think I would like to add anything.
Okay, thank you very much. It has been a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, it's our pleasure. Okay, we can carry on forever, you know, if you'd like to. Yes, we can carry on forever. Let's move to another, I think, important subject. Are you aware of any initiatives about raising awareness in type 1 diabetes? Let's say any lessons, any information, or any other chronic medical condition, because I think this is a general issue about building the health literacy from a very young age for the kids, and also building the health literacy for all of us as adults.
Yeah, I think it's very important to raise awareness, not only for diabetes, but for also other chronic conditions. And that's a part of why awareness means so much to me, because it really ensures that people with these chronic conditions can feel understood, they can feel seen, and they don't have to feel alone in everything they face and all the challenges and struggles of their daily life. I haven't heard of, personally, any awareness campaigns that I can think of.
Yes,
But I'm sure there are many to raise awareness for diabetes and to kind of ensure that people know more about it.
Yes, I think, and this is a general statement, we need more and more, essentially, we need to build awareness, because knowledge is a power, this is a cliche, but I think this is a classic example when knowledge gives you the power. So essentially, obviously, we need empathy, we need to see the challenges from people's perspective, but there are so many myths nowadays. And especially with the social media, I can say that there are so many myths for so many different conditions. I think we need to know some basic facts. And this would help a lot. Anything, so let's move towards a slightly different direction. Let's say with regards to having the support at school, because there has been a lot of discussion, and I think we will get this opportunity to discuss about a school nurse, about someone who can essentially give you a hand, can support you, guide you, having a personalized plan.
Yes, there's a lot of support from school and support that I need also in my daily life because there are so many different things that sometimes I can't handle by myself. So I have the school nurses, I have my parents who support me from home, I have my teachers, the staff, and generally a lot of the people in my class, in my year, who always support me and ask me questions about what it means to live with diabetes and things like that.
Okay. Yes, and I could highlight more the importance, I think, of school nurses and also of educating. Education, yes?
Yes, so I always communicate with my parents and the school nurses as well. So it's a group chat that I check throughout the day before I do sports, before I eat, maybe even just because my blood sugar decided to fluctuate and to go low or to go higher. So that is something that I do on a daily basis, and that's why maybe a lot of you in school might see me checking my phone or texting someone or something like that. So I'm not asking how the weather is, just so you guys know. I'm asking, maybe what should I do now? Is this okay? Should I maybe wait to do this? Should I drink 2 sips of juice? So just to have a bit of added support. Yes, I did have it in primary school as well. I think pretty much since my diagnosis, because, especially since I was younger, I definitely needed that support because I couldn't handle it by myself. I didn't know what it would entail or what I had to do. So it's definitely very useful to me.
Okay, and you can see essentially, because we keep talking about the mobile phones and about the restriction, but this is an example. This is actually one of the examples where you can see how advanced technology and mobile phones can help. So that's why, as far as I know, and Myrto can confirm this, there has been an exclusion. So we're talking about being inclusive, but this is a very nice exclusion from the school towards Myrto, so she can have her mobile phone, because obviously this is essential for her health.
Yes. So that is why I will be using my phone a lot in school too. So it is very important to basically know. So my blood sugar levels are shared through the app that I use from my glucose monitor, and my family can see them, so they have an idea of what's going on. And I also use a system called closed loop, which is an automated system that makes life much easier and maybe makes the decisions I have to take a little bit less complicated.
Yes, and now we have the Minister of Education who has arrived, and it's a great pleasure of us. I would like also to add that school nurses are essential and very important, but also nowadays, with the very rapid advances in healthcare, and especially in technologies in type 1 diabetes, also it can be a challenge for the school nurses. Essentially, they need teaching and training. This can be, I can tell you, this can be even difficult for diabetologists. So it's essential to have the healthcare professionals assisting, but also it's essential to keep continuing training so they can assist the children even from a very young age.
Yes, I think that is very important to have people who know what to do in an emergency situation, for example, especially at school when there are many factors that maybe aren't so controlled and when you don't have the same support system to lean back on if anything goes wrong.
Yes. And I would say probably my last comment would be that one of the initiatives which I would suggest, and at the moment this has been taking place through Diabetes UK in the UK, is a great effort in each school for every kid with type 1 diabetes, and a school at the size of St. Catherine's, I would say on average, you expect to have 1 or 2 children with type 1 diabetes to have personalized plans, and also you need to take into account plans about the trips, which are essential for your school life, plans about taking part in sports, plans about any emergencies. So my very last question would be, what about the trips and the excursions, which are so essential for your school life? Do you take part in all the trips?
Yes, I do take part in trips and in sports and in every aspect of my school life. I may need a bit of extra support to do it, but I do get there eventually, and that is something that is, I think, crucial for me, and I never feel excluded from trips or from sports or from anything like that.
Okay, so I couldn't thank you more, Myrto. I really enjoyed, and I hope this applies to you, this fireside chat. So let's now wait for the next speakers. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will have time to get more questions later. Myrto, we have been receiving quite a few questions. One of them is not a question. It says you're amazing, so I thought I should share. You gave us a good glimpse. So you gave us a good glimpse into the realities of everyday life, what it means. I guess it's the closest we can get to feeling what it must be for you, for your parents, and for the society, your environment, your close environment. Okay, now I would like to move from lived experience to the wider environment that surrounds the condition. So it is my pleasure to invite our panelists for the discussion. Type 1 diabetes in the school environment, okay? So Ms. Sofia Zaharaki, Minister of Education and Religious Affairs. Thank you. It's an honor for having you here. Mr. John Perriss, Principal of St. Catherine's. And Ms. Iliana Magra, Journalist at Kathimerini. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you all for being here today. The only thing that I would like to say is that hearing Myrto speak about diabetes type 1 was so touching. You are amazing. It's incredible that you're 13 years old and you made that amazing speech. And I think that it is very useful that we're going to have this conversation here with the two of you representing, the private sector and the public sector, because we've seen now with Myrto's example how important the school is. As we were just seeing these texts, the fact that she's texting with the nurses, and the fact that you're holding this event here today is very crucial in raising awareness, and I think maybe not only of the personnel, but and of the people around Myrto, but even for other students as well. So Minister, I would like to start with you by asking you, what about the public sector? I mean, is any of this available in public schools? Could a child, a student that has diabetes type 1 in a public Greek school have these amenities? Is the personnel trained to deal with something like this?
Well, I cannot thank you enough, Myrto, for having us here. It's not an easy task, can assure you, to leave the office, especially at this very hectic time. We're planning for so many things, not just for private and public schools, in trying to make a difference, which is not very easy. I can tell you it's really a daunting task. But again, it was an inspiration to have you invite us here. I think you can champion change and probably be an inspiration for many, many children who cannot be as vocal, maybe, as you bringing us here, having all this amazing context and content, and the beautiful area and the school and what it provides us today. So I'm really honored, and I'm happy that I was able to escape let's say, the office life and be able to be here to listen to you, listen to the professionals, and have an opportunity to share the aspect and the mindset that is very much prevalent in the Greek public school system. Back in the past, when I was a teacher myself at Tzoulis primary school, and then in public schools around Athens, in Attica, all in all, I would never have imagined that we could have made strides in order to be able to meet better numbers of school nurses in the Greek public school system. And I'm not being a partisan here, I'm not using that in a partisan way, but I think it's a common accomplishment and an achievement that we can now have this year more than 3,500 school nurses appointed in the public school system. Back in 2019, that was about 1,400. And what is better and what is more, let's say, commendable is the permanent appointments that we have, because the numbers I just used are the people that come and join us for 9 months. These are the people that we appoint, and in comparison, the people that we have in permanent positions have again doubled, and we have more than 340 in the public school system. Is it enough? It can never be enough. But the scarcity and the problem in finding school nurses all around Europe and worldwide is a very important issue. And if you look at the situation of children dealing with diabetes, and not just diabetes, all around the world, you will see that one of the most critical points of discussion we have had in the school system is where to find ones, is to find the school nurses, even if you have the funds, if you have the means. So you will look at Ireland, you will look at the UK in general, you look at USA, and you will find the same topics of discussion. First of all, to find the nurses, which is also a big issue and a very critical issue. Ask Adonis Georgiadis, he has a lot to share about that.
Absolutely.
Because lots
it's
of
not
nurses,
just the school nurses,
are
nurses
leaving
in general.
the public hospital in order to come and join us, and we're really thankful for that, but it is an issue that we have to deal with. And number two, for them to be better trained. And apart from the important years that the child needs the school nurse support, we also have to really boost the independence of the child as a young adult in order to be able to meet with the special circumstances that diabetes 1 is.
But besides just the nurses, I suppose that it's also the personnel that needs to be trained, the staff in general. And I would like to ask you, Mr. Principal, have you trained your staff specifically for how to deal with diabetes type 1?
Yeah, of course, and I think there's lots of different conditions, and obviously we're here about type 1, but as Myrto said, there's a huge amount of conditions that aren't seen. And that's always the difficult thing, isn't it, where we've got an amazing team of nurses who I know are here and do a wonderful job, and with Myrto and plenty of others in our community. But of course, there's going to be things happening. It could be hypo, it could be different things happening during the course of a day, which are going to need something, a sort of very quick reaction. Yeah. So it's that sense of understanding, as we've already heard, about actually she's going to need to get her phone out. She's going to need to go somewhere to take insulin or have sugar. So everyone needs to be aware of that, because in any community, we all need to be part of the same solution. And therefore, and of course, as you get older, you would change your teacher, or your teacher change, and your class changes.
And also your needs.
Of course, yeah.
As a teenager, I don't know. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, you know, life becomes a bit busier.
And of course, and I think
stressful.
that's an important thing to raise, and you're closer to it than I am. But actually, that time being a teenager is always one of confusion and anxiety anyway. I mean, let's not all dive back into our 15-year-old selves, ladies and gentlemen. But we remember it is that time of discovering who you are, and then you have that added layer of a condition that no one can see.
Yep.
So it's a very difficult time, and actually trying to navigate your way through that, having people around, not just family, but friends and people in school that can really help and support.
So how did you train your staff? Specifically?
I think lots of different ways, both in terms of particular sessions, so what to do if, and there's things that you can do, right, if this situation happens, this is what you then are going to need to do. Yeah. And it could be the sort of things, all the other conditions that we spoke about.
Yeah. And Minister, does this happen at all in public schools, in terms of training the staff for medical conditions that the students might be facing?
Not in general numbers. You'll see it in some cases. And I really would like to commend, you know, the amazing role also of the nurses and lots of professionals, medical professionals that visit our schools and are making really important recommendations about instructing and educating the staff, the general staff, and I mean teaching staff, but also the Hellenic Diabetes Association that has raised three very important words that I think they should be the principles of all the effort that are making for Myrto and every child, because Myrto and lots of young students, they may be in the center of Athens or in the suburbs of Athens, but let's think about the child that is very far away from Athens.
Absolutely.
Let's think about the child in a small regional school somewhere in Evros, and probably not having, or with a very high rate of difficulty finding a nurse that could be available for this very small regional school.
What happens there? What
then
are the
you have some, you know, counseling, some advice that is happening from the local nurse or the hospital, should there be one, or a health center, and then lots of support by the parents. Usually have your communication with teachers and head teachers that are making a difference, especially in the most remote areas. But this is not happening in a systematic way. And this is what we're now trying to change with Minister Georgiadis in order to have more instruction and more seminars, not just for the school nurses, that as I have pointed out, they are raising in numbers, but also for the general teaching staff. So we will start the seminars starting next February in order to teach our teachers in order to be able to help the children more. Should they need something on a daily basis, which they do, or should there be a hypo or another case where there has to be a case of emergency? But the three principles, the three words that I have really circled in my homework for diabetes 1 was dignity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that all the words and all the cases, Myrto, you just mentioned, should you go on a school trip or go out with your friends, meet with in an afternoon club, is about having all these principles met.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've, two more words that Myrto mentioned have stuck in my mind, awareness and empathy. And it's true that you cannot have empathy if you do not have awareness, and she was absolutely right about that. And it's also true that if you don't have to deal with diabetes type 1, we really don't know enough about it. And especially when, you're a child or a teenager, it might be even harder to know more about it. So do you, besides this event, have you had any more awareness talks with the pupils and the students as well?
Well, the joy was that Myrto spoke to a theatre full of her peers, years 7, 8, and 9. So actually all of them have a much greater awareness at the moment as well. And of course, as you mentioned, when you're sort of growing up in any sort of time, yes, it's this, as I said last time, in terms of that anxiety about who you are, but also it's the thing about being different, isn't it? that actually when you are that age, sometimes those social norms are being challenged and you want to fit into a certain pattern, and being different is quite hard. So actually having everyone understanding that we're all different in lots of different ways, and actually that's a really good thing. And let's celebrate that difference, and let's get on board with that. And actually this is a really important condition and it makes a huge impact. But actually we need to make sure we celebrate every type of difference. So whether you're in a small regional school or whether you're in a big city school, all those things need to happen.
How can one achieve that? Because when I was thinking about this panel, I was thinking that, there is the training for the school nurses and the staff, but the stigma aspect, the discrimination aspect, that, it happens in schools in general, no matter if you have a medical condition or not. Children will find a reason to pick on you. What can educators do about that, especially when it comes to medical conditions, about alleviating the stigma aspect?
I think for me it's about culture, isn't it? We talk about our school values a lot, care being one of them, integrity, curiosity, dedication, all those sort of things, and every school will have very similar words, I'm sure. And it's that culture of making sure we take people as they are. We are looking for that opportunity to be kind. Can I say something positive that's going to make someone's day? Can I make good things happen for people around me? And you're absolutely right. Is every child in every school in the world going to get it right all the time? Of course they're not. They're children, and children should be allowed to make mistakes at times. Sure. But also making sure we have enough boundaries in place in any education setting, whatever that is. But that sense of looking after each other, that we belong in a place, we're part of the same team, and we're here to support each other through the ups and the downs. Yeah. And I think having that as a school culture, that sense of community, is not going to ever alleviate every problem on earth, but it's going to certainly help.
And Minister, is that feasible? Can it happen to build this culture in public schools as well?
We're trying to, and it's not us. It's actually the educators and the school community as a whole. And I truly feel, and I'm optimistic to tell you the truth, I can see young peers at the age of Myrtos and even younger or older, and they're really creating this enabling context and environment where everybody can feel, seen, understood, valued, and appreciated. And I think the new generations are leading the way. Where there was stigma and where there was prejudice, you can see more understanding, acceptance, and more people willing to learn more. So the more they learn, the more they hear about conditions or chronic situations that can happen to a peer or a classmate, they are more willing to be here in the auditorium should they be given a chance. So the more we provide these learning journeys, also for the private school system, for the teachers and the children themselves, you must be certain that they will be here, they will be present. And they will be present in order to make a change in the school community as well. So I really hope that we can have even some combined seminars or these learning journeys, as I call them, where children from public schools and children from private schools can get together. For us, and with former Minister Kerameos and Minister Pierakakis, we try to include in the curricula this skills lab during the daily schedule, where these afternoon classes or some extra activities are included in your 6 or 7 day timetable. Lessons about empathy, understanding each other, battling bullying or other things, and trying really to cultivate a school environment that, as I said, is more enabling, more understanding, and trying really to highlight special skills, but understanding and being accepting everyone.
Fingers crossed. I know. Because it's true, though, that people in general, but especially teenagers and children, hear more from their peers than, if Mr. Tzoulis, who was an excellent speaker otherwise, went to speak to them, and if Myrto went to speak to them, I think that children would naturally listen more to someone who's closer to them. What about diet? How does that come into place? And the available options for meals at schools?
Yeah, and certainly that's a continual dialogue with the caterers in the school. We just changed caterers, actually, and they do a brilliant job. And actually that dialogue with the operations team, dialogue with the nurses, dialogue with everyone to make sure we have a range of options to cater for every possible taste. not just taste, but also need. Of course, that is really important. And also being, again, that sense of awareness about having certain foods on you. Myrto will need to have some things on her that other people wouldn't do, for example, and making sure that we allow that. And making sure, again, there is awareness in that sort of canteen setting. But I think the point you raised about peers is really important, that actually not just the age group themselves, but also those older children in the school. Because you're absolutely right that people like me will stand up wearing a suit and say things on stages like this, but actually how often will they listen? But they'll definitely listen to a 15-year-old, and they'll definitely listen to an 18-year-old that they look up to. So I'm actually trying to educate our older students, our year 12s and year 13s, to be those role models that we want our young children to have. And that could be through empathy and kindness, but it could be through exercise, it could be through diet, it could be through lots of different things.
Yeah. But that's the thing, because it's great to hear from your peers, but not everyone is as motivated or as good a public speaker. It's something, it's a skill. Sometimes it's innate, but other times it's a skill that needs to be cultivated.
And that's why you give them the opportunity. And in any education environment, there has to be that sense of risk-taking. And there has to be that sense of giving everyone opportunity. And through all those opportunities, some things aren't going to go quite so well. And that's okay. Because through those things, you're going to learn. And then when they get older, it could be university, it could be work or whatever else, they're then going to remember those experiences.
Absolutely.
And it could be organising a charity stall at a Christmas fair. It doesn't really matter what it is.
No, it stays with you, absolutely.
Absolutely. And actually making sure we're having the older ones working with younger ones is really important. That builds culture, that builds that sense of shared journey.
Yeah. And Minister, coming back to you, tell us a bit about the diet aspect first, and whether there is the chance in public schools as well to sort of modify the meal choices for pupils and students that might need something different than the average student. And also about the opportunity aspect. Do public school students in Greece, can they have these opportunities that will help them grow and then become role models for their peers?
Well, I've seen this happen, so it's not just a perception aspect, which I'm not going to share in order to present or embellish a situation. I've seen this happen with lots of role models and people that have really stood up. They are not being given a chance to pitch for ideas as often as they would do in your school, but this is growing, this is really improving, and I see that they're using social media in such a way that they're becoming role models, even there is not such an auditorium in their schools, but they're using the power of the social media to make a positive change. So I'd say that apart from this physical, or this opportunity to stand up in front of your peers and be able to pitch about what is happening to you, be able to present in a say, time-conscious manner, and be able to speak, they're not being given that chance that often. We've seen children from public school systems that have really made a change. They talked about personal experiences. They want to share it as much as they can and be able to really make a positive change and an influence and an impact. Now back to the diet, because it has really troubled us. I was formerly a Minister for Cohesion and Family, and one of the main competences of one of our organizations, OPECA, was dealing with those school meals that are offered in public primary schools. Not everywhere in Greece, but this has, of course, increased in budget over the past 5 years, and they are being given a chance. They are really reporting the situation early in the beginning of the school year in order to have some diet alternatives. School canteens are being informed by parents and the school teacher when there are situations of, when we have cases of children in the public school system. They may not be given a school meal, but they will have to get their meal from the canteen or a light snack. And the owners are usually notified well in advance that a child can or cannot.
So it can be done.
It
The
can be
different
done.
dietary requirements.
It's not easy, because you realize that this personalized, individualized approach, it cannot be offered that easily in a public school system. But of course, I've seen this happening. This is becoming more streamlined. I think that the more we talk about the situations to the average teacher, to the head teacher. They're given written records and, of course, some set of instructions what to do. You will see this happening in a more, let's say, uniform way that secures every child, individualist plan, which I've heard the doctor said that you need to have those plans. This is, of course, a directive that is set by the diabetes associations all around the world, and we're really happy that we're able to incorporate it more and more also in the public school system. Not easy, but I think that we are making progress.
And the bureaucracy of it all is not, does not stop it from materializing.
Well, bureaucracy is something that we will always be dealing with. I mean, whether you've seen this in paper form or you've seen it also in digital, sometimes we're really, eager to transfer, written bureaucracy also to the digital side of it. But I think that it's such a great effort and it's such a great cause that for those children, we really have to do our best and, deal also with some hectic daily red tape issues that we always have to deal with.
And you've both worked in different schools in your careers. So I would like to ask you from the aspect of, working abroad and from having been an educator here and now the Minister of Education in Greece, what are the gaps that you're mostly identifying that you think should be the priority to fill?
Yeah, I think certainly a lot of my career I was in boarding schools in the UK, and that's a very different setting. Having I ran a boarding house of 69 teenage boys, which I know maybe sound like a complete nightmare to you, but actually, because you're living and working together, it was a real sense of community. I think the only gap probably, and I've been very fortunate to work in schools with fantastic medical care, and certainly great awareness, but often it's that sense of confidence from the young people to be able to speak about it. And actually making sure we instill that confidence as early as possible that any issues that might happen, we're able to share them.
So you mean that in the UK, children had it more? They had the confidence
well,
more
I don't think as a percentage, no. But in terms of making sure we have communities of whatever size or type they are, to have that sense of openness that people can say anything and be very open about how they're feeling. In terms of your question, that tended to be the barrier, particularly for your teenager, who, although everything was in place from an official school point of view, it was often that barrier of confidence sometimes that one has to take that step. Once that step's taken, great, we're here for you. And despite the fact you can reassure them that whatever that is troubling them, we're here for you, sometimes it does take that individual sense of courage, and I spoke about that earlier, that it's that sense of courage being able to say, do you know what, this is who I am, and this is what a condition I have. And that's probably, for me, in my experience, probably been that only barrier that I've probably seen.
Minister, how about you?
Well, as regards the medical condition, I think that we're really improving. So the more we talk about it, it's becoming, as I said before, an environment that it accepts more, and this is very much instilled in younger people. If I had to compare, because I had the chance to also work in Oxford for a very short period of time for a school transfer project, I saw that, and I really admired the fact that schools were more independent. It's too centralized here. We're making too many decisions on the ministry level that could be and should be taken on a more regional and local environment and level. Local education authorities in England are making a change, and all these decisions have to be taken by me in the Greek public school system, which I really hope that we could be changing or could change in the near future. And of course, I saw children that were more empowered and were really given the chance to really, present themselves, making more decisions. I even remember those children in the primary school that I had the opportunity to attend for the months in Oxford, preparing the school, the school meal area during, taking turns. Every year they would make a change every year, would take turns in preparing that. And I think that they were more independent, they were more empowered, and I really hope that we'll get there. And I would really like to see the Greek school become more autonomous in a way, more extrovert, more outward looking. I really think that this will become more visible and more of a reality with proper teacher training, more digital equipment, and children that are given more chances to have better perspective.
Yeah, and maybe more inclusive as well. So if Myrto and Mr. Tzoulis could join us, because we're going to entertain some of the questions that you've sent, and oh my God, you've sent so many. So I don't think we have time for them all, but while you guys are coming up on stage, we have a question here for the minister. How can Greek schools better educate children and parents to proper dietary needs and make the foods available healthy for all children, and healthy, I suppose, for all children?
Two things, and these things are happening in cooperation with the Health Ministry, and Irini Agapidaki, and says the alternate minister, as well as Minister Adonis Georgiadis. We have already included in the RRF, you know, it's the Recovery and the Resilience Fund, the European funds that were given in order to tackle the epidemic. It's a huge budget that's spread out on different pillars. So one of the main priorities of the Ministry of Health is the new plan and the new project in order to instill better guidelines for dietary needs and also stricter guidelines as to the school canteen operation. So starting September 2026, these new guidelines will be more present, visible, and even more stricter in the operation of school canteens. And we will have more seminars happening in regional and local level as to proper diet, guidelines, and, you know, the cells of independence in order for the child to make a better dietary decision, not having necessarily, you know, your parent or your teacher disciplining you, or just, you know, or constantly on your side, being able to make a better, more informed dietary decision. So this is happening, as I said, in cooperation with the Ministry of Health, and for the school canteens also with the Ministry of Development, because it's a tripartite cooperation.
And since we're still on the topic of schools, we have a question here for Myrto that's relevant, and they're asking you, how do you feel you could have been better supported at school at the age of 7? Was there an opportunity to share with your school friends your struggles and your needs at the time?
Yes, there was some opportunities for me. However, these were often things that I had to do myself and kind of take that initiative to start this journey of awareness so other people could kind of understand what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that in terms of the school, what the school could have done, I feel that maybe they could have provided a little bit of support, or maybe educating the children that don't know what type 1 diabetes is. I mean, I didn't know it existed before I was diagnosed either. So I think the awareness part is very important for school life.
So someone here is asking, why are school nurses trained on, so basically why the training for school nurses on type 1 diabetes is not mandatory in all schools where there are students with that condition. And I was wondering, Principal, if you could tell us if it was mandatory for you to train your staff, or if it was just because you knew Myrto was a student.
I think you just do it because it's right rather than it's mandatory. I don't think it, well, I don't know whether there is a law about it, to be honest. But I think, like with anything, you're always going to have a range of conditions in any school environment. So therefore, you want to make sure there is a suite of training for everybody. I know our nursing team have all come from the hospitals, and they have come into this environment because they particularly enjoy that relationship with our young people, and they like building those relationships. So in terms of training, it's something that they would have wanted to do anyway. We would have wanted to provide it. Whether it's mandatory or not, I suppose in some ways is irrelevant, because you want to do what's right.
Yeah, but what if not everyone has the same willingness? Do you think that it should be mandatory?
But it's already well known. You know, for the school, they know it. Yeah. But you know, this decision or this discussion about having something that is mandatory, when you have a nurse, they already know what to do. But for me, it could be more than, you know, valuable and obvious, the necessity also for other important players in the school community to be able to have like ambassadors and people that would know what to do in cases, should there be a diabetes 1 case of one of our students, or should there be other cases where somebody had to step in in case of emergency, especially in those cases where you don't have a nurse. And I've already told you, we have 3,500 nurses, and they usually cover nearby or just adjacent schools. But the reality is that you may be found with a situation where you may not have a nurse present. So the necessity of having this training also for other school life important people would make life, not much easier, but very important in order to have this inclusive environment, as we said, and somebody who would be able to operate in different contexts.
And a question for Mr. Tzoulis, which sounds to me a bit specific, but please comment on research on CRISP, edited stem cell therapy.
Yes.
Maybe tell us a bit about what it is.
Yes, this is extremely specific, I would say. So, this is one of the, I would say, new kids on the block in research about diabetes. There has been research in general, I would say, about, we all know that there is lack of insulin, so for decades, for 100 years now, what we do is we give insulin in different devices, injections or pumps. There has been essentially a lot of research during the last 3 to 4 decades about how to stop the autoimmune condition. So far, there have been a lot of failures. Recently, there has been a success in terms that if you diagnose at a very, very, very early stage, you could halt, or I would say you could delay the deterioration. CRISP is something which is about genetics, is very specific, is not here yet, will not be here yet. So the message is, at the moment, we're still in the era when it's all about the most effective way to offer insulin. The era when we will be able to say about curing a disease, essentially about making type 1 diabetes a curable disease, I would say in the best case scenario would be a decade, probably much longer.
And one more, what are maybe, I guess, both of your tips on what to do for first aid when a friend with diabetes faints? Has this ever happened to you, Myrto?
No. I have fainted once, I think. When I was just diagnosed, I was maybe 6 days out of the hospital. But for me, this is a very rare happening. Like, it has not happened often to me.
Mm-hmm.
And there are very few times where my blood sugar has gone so low that I would be near faint. But what I think would be the best thing to do if someone with diabetes faints is to call a nurse or a healthcare professional, because nearly no one knows what to do in that situation, and they don't have the medical expertise to offer help or anything like that. So I think it's important for someone who is trained to deal with this, to handle it.
And if there is no one available, what should they do?
The best thing to do is essentially to take the measures to prevent someone with diabetes faint. Let's put it this way, if someone with diabetes starts in any way showing signs or symptoms of feeling very unwell, always what you should think is that this could be a hypo. So that you should find a way to give to this person sugar. If it's high, even if you give a bit more sugar, nothing will happen. So the central idea, and this happens everywhere, even if it happens in the hospital and the diabetes department, is even if you don't have access to any way to know how low or high the blood sugar is, give some sugar. Usually it takes some time for people don't faint just like this. So as long as someone is consciousness, if you give an orange juice, or you give, let's say, Coca-Cola, or you give sugar with water, something very sugary, not food, within 2 to 3 minutes, the sugar goes up and most people feel better. If someone has really lost consciousness, then you shouldn't give anything to this person to eat or drink because he could aspirate. So you put in recovery position, so essentially lying like this, and then you call 166. And my last comment about this is why it's very important, and I couldn't agree more with the minister that it's not all about nurses. Nurses cannot be diabetologists, pulmonologists, cardiologists. They are school nurses and they have so many responsibilities. So let's say every kid with a long-term condition should have a personalized plan by the healthcare professional in charge. This has to be shared with the nurse. So let's say, for example, you should say that, Myrto, if this happens, this is a step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully, sure.
It doesn't have to do with the reply that was just given, because it is something that prevails in the reaction time and the reaction possibility in schools as well. And I'm talking about first aid, that's why I'm not really relating this to that, but I'm really stressing out here the importance of having people on location in schools. And I'm actually relating this to the recent decision we have made in our ministry in order to equip Greek schools with AEDs. And the first reaction was, how can I use it? Οι απενιδωτές. So you can. I'm not relating the one to the other. I'm just saying that in the new era of our learning journeys, I think we should be talking more about what other things we should learn as educators, as school community, when we are in a school where we're saying that we may be using the equipment, we may be buying the equipment, what it's used if we don't know how to use it. That's why this is going to be accompanied by a seminar of first aid for Greek educators, as well as selected teams of students all around Greece. And I'm saying that this is important to be talking about what more we should know in order to provide this safe, secure, enabling, and inclusive environment for every child.
Absolutely, and I know we're running out of time. So one last question for Myrto. What is the one thing that you would ask the government to do about diabetes type 1 in Greece? Honestly, it's not mine. I read it.
So what I would say is maybe try to raise a bit of awareness, because most of the population, I would say, does not know what type 1 diabetes is. And even my parents say that before I was diagnosed, they didn't know what it was either. So this is definitely a very common thing. And I think it's very important, as I said before, to have kind of a basic knowledge of it. They don't have to fully comprehend it, just to have some sort of an idea and to be able to have that kind of awareness.
I think that's fair. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Thank you, Myrto, for organizing. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And I think we have the closing remarks now.
Okay, I think I will continue thanking all of you. That was amazing. Thank you, Liana, for playing such a great role here, and it was a very insightful conversation. So as we come to the end of this really beautiful evening, I want to return to an image often used at Stanford, the swimming duck. Calm and composed on the surface, yet beneath the water, paddling with constant effort just to stay afloat. Type 1 diabetes is much the same, a 24/7, 36/5-day effort, a mental and emotional roller coaster, visible only to a few people and often invisible to the rest of the world. Visible only to the parents, the caregivers, people living with it every hour of every day. Tonight reminded us of something that Myrto expressed so powerfully, that what hurts the most is not the condition itself, but our ignorance of the invisible battles others are fighting. So the message is clear. We must transform ignorance into empathy. So before we close, I would like to invite all those affected by type 1 diabetes, directly or indirectly, to please stand. So please, I mean, if you feel comfortable doing so. Let us make the invisible visible. Let us allow Myrto and all of you standing here today to be a beacon of inspiration, not only for raising awareness of type 1 diabetes, but for expanding our empathy for every silent struggle carried by our friends, our family, our neighbors, and our strangers. John said it perfectly. Strangers are friends we haven't made yet. So this is how we build a more understanding, a more inclusive, a more supportive society. Thank you all for being here tonight. Let's convert ignorance to empathy. Let's turn empathy into action. Thank you. Thank you, Myrto.